She didn't need applause. She needed the truth to stay intact. But when her body cam footage vanished and internal affairs rewrote the chain of custody, she realized it wasn't just the case they were stealing, it was her name on it. I never thought silence could hum so loud. The precinct was quiet when I walked in, except for the hum of the old coffee machine and the buzz of fluorescence that made everything feel more tired than it already was. I clutched the manila folder tighter in my hand. Inside, the signed confession. 36 hours, 3 interviews, 1 broken suspect, all caught on body cam. I had earned that moment. It wasn't ego, it was justice, cold, fragile, real. Captain Torres was already in his office, blinds half drawn, a file open in front of him. I knocked, waited, stepped in. "You got it?" he asked without looking up. I placed the folder on his desk like it was a heartbeat I'd resuscitated. Confessions in there, suspect waived counsel, all on camera, chain of custody's clean, and for once, we're ahead. He leaned back, folding his arms. He had that face, the kind that had seen too many ruined careers and too few redeemed reputations. "Good work, Diaz." My name. He said it like it was neutral, but something in his tone scratched at me. It didn't land the way it should have. Not the way it used to, back when I believed this unit was home. I turned to leave, but something made me glance back. Torres closed the folder, didn't even skim it. "Captain?" I said, "Good work. I'll take it from here." 3 sentences, enough to make my ribs contract. This wasn't a celebration. It was a wall being built. And I wasn't meant to be on the other side. Later that night, I uploaded the footage from my body cam. I named the file Confession to a Case 119. Then I sent a copy to myself. Paranoia? No. Pattern recognition. I'd watched too many good cases die in the system, 1 missing form, 1 overwritten video, 1 captain too loyal to politics, not people. 2 days later, I opened my case log to check the status. File not found. I clicked again, still gone. The confession, the body cam upload, the custody trail, all erased, except my heart knew it had once existed. I stormed down to records. "Where's my footage?" The clerk barely looked up. Internal Affairs flagged it. Chain of custody was violated. Violated? My voice cracked. "By whom?" He shrugged. "Ask them." I did. I marched straight to the 3rd floor, where Internal Affairs sat like a locked jaw waiting to bite. And they did. "Detective Diaz," the lead officer said with a flat, practiced smile. "The footage you uploaded was time-stamped incorrectly. The chain broke. We had to pull it." "I time-stamped it manually because the auto tool glitched," I shot back. "The metadata shows continuity." He sighed like I'd offered him a weak cup of coffee. "Then you shouldn't have used your personal email as backup. That's policy." My stomach twisted. Policy 9.3 allows temporary external backup in case of system failure. Captain Torres didn't authorize it. And there it was, the crack under the words, the betrayal under the badge. I was being written out. Next, they'd say it wasn't my case, that I hadn't led the interviews, that the confession was obtained by someone else. They'd redact my name, cut the footage, shuffle the records until I disappeared like fog under a precinct fan. But not this time. Not without a fight. Not without the truth gasping back to life, 1 redacted line at a time. You won't believe who tried to bury her next, and how far they were willing to go. There's something surgical about watching someone dismantle your work with a smile. I sat across from Lieutenant Reese in the Internal Affairs conference room. White walls, white table, a single silver speakerphone between us, still warm from the last closed-door call. She wore her hair tight, her tone tighter. "Detective Diaz," she began, scrolling through her tablet without eye contact. We've reviewed the BODYCAM upload. Per our internal review, the chain of custody is considered compromised. I clenched my jaw. You mean someone compromised it? Let's not make verbs do the dirty work. She looked up for the first time, a flicker of surprise. Your backup method violated standard protocol. That's not under debate. I leaned forward. I followed Policy 9.3. External storage is permitted when department systems fail. The upload was delayed 3 minutes because our secure server was down. She swiped again. Then why was the original copy inaccessible within 24 hours? I don't know, but I do know it wasn't me. Another pause, calculated, like a surgeon holding the scalpel 1 second longer than needed. That's not how Captain Torres described it. And just like that, the floor shifted. He gave a statement? I asked slowly. He submitted a clarification, she corrected. Said the confession was obtained collaboratively, that the folder he closed was a draft, preliminary, that another detective had conducted the actual interview that broke the suspect. A chill threaded down my spine. He's lying. She raised an eyebrow. That's a serious accusation. No, I said, voice sharp and low. What's serious is trying to erase a detective's work because it makes someone else uncomfortable. She folded her tablet. I suggest you step carefully, detective. There's no upside to making this personal. But it was already personal. My voice was missing from the audio transcript. My name was excluded from the interview log. My own BODYCAM footage had been cut to 3 minutes of grainy silence, the confession gone. The file now bore a new label. Interview Case 119, Part 2 Collab. Collaborative. A word that meant nothing and everything. I pulled out my phone, slid it across the table. This is a copy of the original footage, the full 27 minutes. With timestamps, with audio. She didn't touch it. Where did you store it? In the cloud. Before the department backup failed, it's encrypted, chain preserved. Reese blinked. That wasn't submitted with the original report. It was included in the initial upload folder. She nodded slowly, folding her hands. Detective, I hope you understand. This is no longer just about policy. This is a question of command discretion. There it was again. Command? Captain Torres. Someone didn't want my name attached to the confession because it threatened something bigger. A promotion, a deal, a political narrative. And then came the moment I didn't expect. She tapped the speakerphone. Would you repeat that, Captain? Static crackled. Torres's voice came through, calm, rehearsed. This is my unit. I decide who saved it. I stared at the phone. He didn't deny it. He was just claiming it. My body felt like it was bracing for an earthquake. Every hour I'd spent on that case, every word, every push to get the truth out of that man, reduced to a trophy someone else could pin to their chest. I stood slowly. Then let's see what the chain really holds. Because it's not broken. It's been tampered with. Reese didn't stop me. She just tapped her screen. A notification chimed on my phone as I walked out. Access log requested. Confession 2A, Case 119. User, Internal Affairs, Reese. Time, 10 to 23 a.m. They were watching. So was I. And I wasn't done. They tried rewriting the file. In the next 24 hours, she rewrote the rules. Ever seen a detective fight the system with her own evidence? Stay with her, subscribe to follow every move. They erased her. She hit record. The silence of betrayal echoes louder than a siren. I sat in my car across the street from Precinct HQ, engine off, eyes locked on the frosted glass windows of the 3rd floor. Internal Affairs worked behind those panes, dismantling reputations with paper trails and procedural jargon. I imagined their printer spitting out a revised chain of custody, erasing my name with the ease of a backspace. In my lap, my phone buzzed. The notification read, "Access log updated. File copied to shared internal." They were moving it again. I opened my encrypted folder. The cloud backup no one knew I had. The one I'd mirrored from my BODYCAM before uploading the department copy. I watched the raw footage again, my voice calm, the suspect cracking, his hands shaking as he said, "I did it. I didn't mean to kill her." I had gotten that confession clean, no threats, no pressure, just truth and persistence, and now it belonged to someone else. Inside the precinct, the whispers had started. I saw it in the way Jenkins looked away when I entered the bullpen, the way Rodriguez double-checked his email when I walked by. A memo had gone out. I wasn't a threat. I was an inconvenience. I didn't cry, but I didn't blink either. Instead, I made a copy of the footage, sent it to my union rep, then another, to an independent prosecutor's office, the third. I uploaded anonymously to an external server, one with a built-in timestamp, IP log, and open access to media outlets if triggered. I called it Failsafe Confession.mp4. Then I walked straight back into Torres's office. He was alone for once, no folder in sight. "Detective," he greeted flatly, eyes scanning a blank screen. I didn't sit. "I want the case reassigned to me," he sighed theatrically. "That's not how it works." "You told IA this was a team effort," I said. "You cited discretion. So here's mine. I'm requesting formal reinstatement as lead on case 119. He stood up slowly. "You're out of line." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "Not yet, but I'm getting there." He moved toward the door to close it. "This is my unit. I decide who saved it." I let the silence hold for a beat. "Then you won't mind if the city sees what saving it looks like." He froze. For the first time, Captain Torres didn't have words, not because he was caught, but because he knew I was willing to let the story breathe. And stories, once released, don't come back obediently. Later that night, I got the call. "Diaz?" It was Reese from Internal Affairs. "We need you to come in." "Now?" "Now. Bring any original files. There's been a breach." I paused. "Of the chain of custody?" "Yes." The irony snapped through me like static. I ended the call, walked to my fridge, opened it, stared. The quiet wasn't peace anymore. It was the moment before the alarm goes off. She's stepping back into the building. But this time, not to ask, to expose. I didn't walk into Internal Affairs. I walked into Crosshairs. The air inside was cold enough to make my fingers stiff, and the hall smelled like toner and disinfectant, that dry, bureaucratic scent that clung to people who'd never had to clean blood off their own boots. A clerk at the front desk handed me a visitor pass, though I'd been in this department 6 years longer than he had. Reese was waiting by the glass doors, arms folded, face unreadable. "This way." We walked past rooms with soundproof walls, through a corridor lined with closed-case plaques, reminders of justice that made my stomach churn, because I now knew what didn't make it onto those plaques. She led me into a meeting room, dimly lit, with only one chair across from a wall-mounted monitor. "Sit," she said. "We need to walk through something together." The monitor flickered to life. On screen was my BODYCAM file, the same 27-minute video I had backed up, the same footage they claimed was compromised, except this version wasn't mine. The screen displayed a playback window. At the bottom, File, Interview, Case 119, Redesign, v2.mp4. Timestamp, created Work2, 11 a.m., logged by, IA Backroom Zo 1. "I didn't create this," I said instantly. My voice was steady, but I could hear the rage underneath. "We know," Reese replied. "That's the problem." She tapped the tablet in her hand and pulled up a forensic timeline. Two versions of the footage now existed on the department server. Mine, which I uploaded 3 days ago, and this new version, which showed identical visuals, but with 3 seconds of altered audio. "Listen," she said. The confession played, but this time the suspect said, "I was there, but I didn't kill her." I stood up. "That's not what he said. That's not what he said." She paused the video. "Your BODYCAM metadata proves he confessed, but this version was planted on the main server and flagged as the official file, which makes yours look like a fabrication." I stared at the paused image, the suspect frozen mid-blink, my own voice faint in the background. "What are you saying?" Reese looked at me, her voice low. "I'm saying someone inside the department broke into the digital locker and swapped the evidence. We traced the access log. It wasn't external. It was an override from within command." I couldn't breathe for a second. "Command? You mean Torres?" She didn't confirm. She didn't have to. Instead, she slid a printed report across the table. Top line: chain of custody violation. Internal manipulation suspected. "This came from a whistleblower in IT," she continued. "They saw a job flagged as urgent Conf rebuild. Thought it looked suspicious. When we followed the trail, it led back to someone using captain-level override clearance." I clenched my fists. "They doctored a confession. They doctored evidence." "Correct," Reese said. "And they did it on your case." I sat back down. This wasn't about pride anymore. It wasn't even about credit. It was about a truth they were willing to destroy to protect something, or someone else. Maybe it was political. Maybe it was careerist rot. But it didn't matter, because I wasn't walking out of that room with a plea. I was walking out with a strategy. "You said the chain was breached," I said. "Good. Now let's show how." Reese blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I want the internal review reopened. I want every access log, every email, every automatic backup tied to Case 119 pulled and mirrored, and I want this done before Torres gets wind of it." "And if he already has?" I smiled for the first time in hours. "Then he'll know how it feels to be erased by a system that underestimates you." The review has begun, but now she'll face the person behind the cover-up, and he's not alone. By the time I stepped out of internal affairs, the sky had bruised into a purplish gray, that color that says the day's over but the fight isn't. I didn't drive home. I sat in the car and pulled up my emails. My inbox was quiet, too quiet. No updates from the prosecutor's office. No reply from the union rep. But tucked between a junk message and a shift schedule was one line, no subject, no signature. "He's in the HR room, not alone. Check the Zoom log." I stared at it, pulse ticking faster. Whoever sent that knew I'd been locked out of internal meetings since Torres froze my access 3 days ago. I opened the backdoor app the tech had helped me install a year ago when we were debugging corrupted time logs. It was meant to audit the Zoom usage of our precinct. Nothing illegal, just transparency. Back when I still believed in that word. One session stood out. 119 restructure session, duration 42 minutes. Participants: Cap Torres, Deputy Melton, IA review. Reese, HR compliance. Status: recorded. I clicked playback. Torres's voice filled the speakers, confident, clipped, rehearsed. "I'm not saying she didn't do good work. I'm saying the unit needs a consistent image. A scandal here reflects on all of us. If Diaz goes public, the narrative's out of our hands." Melton, the deputy, replied, "So what are you asking?" Torres didn't even flinch. "That we handle it administratively. Close ranks. Say it was a collaborative breach. We lose the confession. We don't lose control." And then the part that boiled me alive. He said my name like a stain. Detective Diaz is passionate but unstable under pressure. We'll say she mishandled the chain of custody. Internal Affairs already flagged her use of personal storage. That's enough to discredit the footage if it surfaces. Reese didn't speak in that clip, but she stayed. And that silence, that silent presence, was worse than betrayal. I closed the file, trembling. My phone slipped slightly from my grip. I didn't pick it up right away. My reflection in the screen looked exhausted, but not broken. Not yet. A ping snapped me out of it. Incoming message. Check the locker. No sender. Just another ghost in the system watching this play out. I got back in my car and drove straight to the precinct, through the side door, past the night desk, to the far hallway where the physical evidence locker sat behind two reinforced doors and a digital log that didn't care about your badge, only your clearance. My ID didn't work. I expected that. But someone had left the second door slightly ajar, just enough. Inside, the locker room was dim. The overhead sensor lights flickered awake as I stepped in. And there it was. Bag 08214. Confession, case 119, audio plus video original. Still sealed, still intact. Someone had protected it. I reached for my phone to document everything. Timestamp, chain seal, even the fingerprint pad. Then I paused, because there, in the physical access log attached to the locker wall, was a signature I didn't expect. I'll review. Reese. 2 hours ago. She had been in here. She could have destroyed it. Instead, she'd left it. The question wasn't why. The question was what she'd do next. He called her unstable. She's about to show him what unshakable looks like. Truth has a weight, and when no one else will carry it, it crushes you from the inside. I held the evidence bag in both hands like it was a living thing. Fragile, but furious. The seal was still intact. The chain of custody form clipped to it was original, ink-stamped, and logged with my signature. Not the revised digital copy. Not the polished lie. This was the moment the suspect had confessed, raw and unedited. I stepped out of the evidence locker just as the hallway lights flickered again. A shadow moved behind the frosted glass. Reese. We stood across from each other like opponents who hadn't chosen to fight, but had no choice but to finish. You left it for me, I said. She didn't answer right away. They ordered me to destroy it. Why didn't you? Because I joined this department to investigate misconduct, not enable it. Her voice was tight, clipped, like every word was fighting to stay civil. And because you were right. That landed harder than I expected. I didn't trust it, not yet. But it lit something inside me I thought I'd lost, the sense that not everyone had sold their spine for a seat at the table. Reese stepped closer. I can't protect you from Torres. He's already briefing HR and legal. They want to label you as insubordinate, possibly unstable, build a case for dismissal. Let them try, I said. I have the footage, the original custody form, and a witness log showing administrative tampering. I'm not walking in blind, she nodded. Then walk in loud. We didn't say goodbye. There wasn't time. Within the hour, I filed an official chain of custody violation complaint. Internal reference code flagged as priority review. I attached the footage, a scan of the evidence bag, the physical log, and a copy of the Zoom meeting. I timestamped everything. I cross-submitted to the prosecutor's integrity division. Then I walked into HR with the bag under my arm and requested a formal appeal to any action proposed against me. The reaction was immediate. Emails, emergency meetings, a scheduled panel review to ensure procedural clarity. But what mattered more? The chain lit up. Audit trails bloomed across the system like wildfire. Every node Torres had touched, every override, was being traced now. And not quietly. By 4 p.m., my union rep called. "We received your submission," he said, voice low. "And the city's legal department has questions, loud ones." I closed my eyes, exhaled. Outside, the precinct windows gleamed under a bruising sunset. For a moment, everything was still. Then a familiar voice behind me. "Taurus." He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He simply said, "You don't understand how this will play out." I turned to face him. "I do," I said softly. "This time, it's all on record." It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about restoration. The morning after I filed the complaint, I arrived at the precinct to find my access badge working again. That was my first clue. The second was the silence. No glances, no smirks, no sidelong pity. Just silence, taut like a rope stretched too tight. Inside the bullpen, a stack of printed emails sat on my desk, paper-clipped and slightly askew. On top, subject, request for clarification, chain of custody, case 119 from City Prosecutor's Office to Command Staff, Internal Affairs, HR Division. They were in it now. I opened the first page. "We request all unaltered copies of footage, original custody logs, and clarification regarding Captain Torres's override of digital archive access on 11/18. I didn't smile. There was nothing satisfying about forcing people to be decent, but there was something sacred about stopping the system from swallowing another honest record. I walked the file down to the mailroom myself, hand-delivered every document, requested a signed timestamp. Then I headed upstairs. Room 4C, legal review. The door was open, a hearing already in progress. Inside, Torres stood before the panel. His suit was flawless, his tie an expensive shade of calm. But there was sweat near his collar. His hands, normally folded with the ease of command, were gripped too tight around a tablet. I acted within discretionary boundaries as outlined in Department Policy 5.1. He was saying, "The digital version of the file lacked appropriate metadata, and I authorized a corrected re-upload." A lawyer across the table raised an eyebrow. "And did you document this authorization anywhere?" Torres hesitated. It was verbal. Another panelist tapped a page. Detective Diaz's original BODYCAM footage was time-stamped, signed into the log, and submitted through correct protocol, including a backup notification citing server error. He didn't reply. They turned toward me as I entered. "Detective," the lead said, "do you have anything to add?" I pulled the evidence bag from my satchel and placed it on the table. This was never about chain of command. It was about chain of truth. A long silence. Then, the panelist closest to the evidence log reached forward. His eyes scanned the sticker, the timestamp, the original signature. He looked up. "This matches the physical log entry. Captain Torres's override occurred afterward, without clearance or secondary verification." A quiet breath moved through the room like a breeze after a storm. Torres tried to salvage it. "This isn't a courtroom." "No," I said. "It's worse. It's a department that was ready to rewrite the truth because it made someone uncomfortable." They didn't dismiss him, not yet. But for the first time, they didn't look at him as the room's center of gravity. They looked at him the way you look at a hole in a story. Something no longer reliable. I stepped out as the panel continued their review. At my desk, a blinking cursor greeted me from my login screen, like nothing had happened, except everything had. I opened a new file, titled it, Addendum, Procedure for Protecting Evidence Chain Integrity, Internal Reform Draft. The system had cracked. Now I would write the part they couldn't edit. She got the panel to listen. But someone else isn't done rewriting the story. The closer you get to justice, the quieter your allies become. The next 48 hours were a blur of depositions, silent stares in elevators, and administrative follow-ups that felt more like surveillance. My emails were now CC'd to people I'd never heard of. HR requested a neutral sit-down to ensure emotional clarity. Someone put a sticky note on my desk that read, "Careful who you burn with your truth." No signature, just that oily undertone of cowardice. I didn't flinch, because under the fear, something else was shifting: leverage. The prosecutor's office had officially requested my full copy of the BODYCAM footage, plus a sworn statement. That meant they were preparing for litigation, not against me, against someone in command, Torres most likely. But the moment I walked into the recording room to give my deposition, I saw something I hadn't expected. Reese, sitting on the far end of the table. She looked tired, less polished. Her badge sat flat on the table beside her, almost symbolic. We exchanged glances, no words. The silence between us now held something different than tension. It held truth, uncomfortable, but intact. The legal officer turned on the recorder. "State your name for the record." "Detective Isabel Diaz." The questions began. I answered each with precision. Times, names, folder names, backup logs. When I described the moment I realized the chain of custody had been breached, my voice didn't crack, but it had weight. Then they asked the question I hadn't prepared for. "Do you believe Captain Torres's actions were intentional misconduct?" The air tightened. I looked straight at the lens. "Yes," I said, "and systemic." The room froze. I had said it, not hinted, not implied, named it: systemic. That one word could change the whole case. Because if it wasn't just a rogue captain, if it was a culture, then the city would bleed liability. Reputations would fall. And someone, somewhere, would do anything to stop that from happening. The officer paused the recording, turned to Reese. "Lieutenant, do you corroborate this?" She stared at me. Then slowly, with a breath that sounded like a resignation, she nodded. "I do." The room didn't move. No one breathed. I didn't thank her. She didn't need it. What she'd done wasn't a favor. It was long overdue accountability. That afternoon, an alert came through the department system. "Captain Torres reassigned pending investigation. Interim lead, Letty Reese." My first reaction wasn't relief. It was suspicion. Because right after the notification, I got a call. Blocked number, a male voice. "You win this round, detective, but someone always pays for the leak." Click. No name, no threat. Just the quiet promise that the system doesn't forget being exposed. I stood by the precinct window that night, watching the city bleed into orange under streetlight haze. The same city I swore to protect. The same city that almost buried my name under corrupted footage and procedural theater. Almost. She exposed the captain. But the system isn't just one man. And the next target might not be her. The first lie is the hardest. The rest are paperwork. Captain Torres was gone, at least officially. His office emptied out overnight, desk cleared, photos gone, not even a half-used coffee tin left behind. It was like the room had never belonged to anyone, which in this department meant it was about to belong to someone else. Reese stepped in as interim command. The mood shifted, but not cleanly. People whispered less, but watched more. The silence in the hallways turned analytical, curious. The kind of quiet where people weigh your threat level before deciding if they should speak to you. I didn't mind. Let them guess. Let them wonder if I had more evidence tucked away. Because I did. The reform memo I started had grown into a full-blown procedural audit proposal. I called it the Diaz Clause, a policy that required every body cam recording linked to a confession or arrest to be stored in triplicate custody: internal server, cloud mirror, and physical backup in the evidence locker. All 3 chains signed by separate individuals. All 3 with alert triggers for unauthorized access. It wouldn't stop corruption, but it would slow it down. I submitted it, and within hours, it triggered exactly what I'd hoped: panic. An emergency Zoom meeting was scheduled. I joined late on purpose, just in time to hear someone say, "If we approve this, we're admitting chain weakness exists." And Reese answered flatly, "It does." I turned on my camera. No policy ever destroyed a career, but the absence of one nearly destroyed mine. Dead silence. A few people dropped off the call without a word. That's how it worked here. Accountability was like a cold draft in a warm room. The ones who couldn't stand it left first. The proposal moved forward anyway, slowly, redlined, trimmed, bled of language that sounded too aggressive. But the core stayed intact, and the next morning, I found something on my desk, a yellow envelope, no note, inside, a printed screenshot of a private message. Torres wasn't acting alone. Look deeper. Start with the April memo. Folder, Policy FARC Exceptions, 3rd floor. I stared at it, heart pounding. This wasn't over. It wasn't even close. I made a copy of the screenshot, hid the original. Then walked quietly to the archive floor where forgotten folders lived between rows of silence and half-lit hallways. The 3rd floor smelled like dust and excuses. I found the folder. It wasn't locked. Inside, printed memos, all signed off by Torres, but co-signed by someone else. Deputy Melton, the man who had sat beside Torres in that Zoom call. The man who hadn't spoken once during the review panel. The one who hadn't objected because he didn't have to. He'd helped write the exception clauses that allowed file edits under critical command discretion. He had built the loophole Torres used, and he was still here, smiling in briefings, quiet during reforms, watching, waiting, maybe even planning. The infection hadn't been cut out, just rearranged. The game had only changed shape. But now, I knew where to look. They thought removing him would end it. She just found the one who opened the door. Some battles don't end with justice. They end with proof that justice was never the point. I held the memo in my hand like it was toxic. And maybe it was. The ink didn't just carry policy. It carried permission. Permission to rewrite facts, to adjust timelines, to bypass the chain of custody under the illusion of urgency. It was all there, signed by Torres and Deputy Melton, stamped confidential, buried under layers of digital misdirection. This wasn't oversight, it was architecture. Melton didn't need to alter evidence himself. He just built the back door. That morning, I requested a meeting with the City Legal Oversight Board. The clerk on the line hesitated. "We'd prefer to keep this internal." "I'm sure you would," I said, "but I'm submitting this under whistleblower protection, and if you deny the hearing, the media gets it instead." Click. 4 hours later, I got the slot. I walked into the conference room with 2 things: the policy exceptions folder and the truth, this time too heavy to bury. The board was polished and political. They smiled like people who only believe facts when they come notarized. "Detective Diaz," one said, "we've reviewed the Torres misconduct case. Your reinstatement is complete and the reforms are progressing. What more are you asking for?" I placed the memo on the table. "I'm not asking, I'm warning." They glanced at the document, flipping pages like it was a brochure. "Deputy Melton?" one murmured. "You're suggesting he—" "I'm not suggesting," I cut in. "I'm showing. He co-authored the clauses Torres used to tamper with Case 119. He designed the exception policy for digital edits, and since Torres fell, Melton's access logs have increased. quietly, repositioning himself. Another board member frowned. But he never executed any tampering himself. That's the point, I said. He didn't have to. The room chilled. They weren't prepared for someone who could prove corruption as a system, not a person. And then Reese walked in. She didn't say a word, just slid another file across the table. It was a list of internal edit logs, all traced back to policy exceptions clauses, all post-Torres, all under the clearance ID D. Melton 88. No one spoke for a full minute. Then the chair of the board leaned back. We'll need to suspend him pending full audit. That was it. No drama, no announcement, just a quiet shift, the kind that topples buildings. Later that week, I returned to the precinct. No stares, no whispers, just normal. Until I passed the evidence board. Pinned there, between the citywide reform bulletin and a recruitment flyer, was something new. Chain Integrity Policy, Diaz Clause Initiative. Approved underneath it, handwritten in red marker. No more shadows. I didn't cry, but I did allow myself 5 minutes alone in the locker room, door shut, phone silent, hand pressed to my chest, like I was still anchoring myself to the truth I almost lost. Torres was gone. Melton was under audit. The loopholes were closing. And me? I wasn't just back. I was a witness. I was a name no longer missing from the case file. And I had learned one thing no department training ever taught. Power fears two things: a camera that can't be erased, and a woman who doesn't blink.